Airing on Asheville FM 103.3 LPFM in Asheville, this is The Final Straw Radio, a weekly anarchist and anti-authoritarian broadcasts and podcast emanating out of occupied Chalagi land in southern Appalachia. We bring you voices and perspectives from projects and struggles all around the world, and you can find our archives, transcripts, ways to follow us and support us at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org. This week, we're sharing a discussion recorded some months back in the Pacific Northwest featuring former political prisoners Eric King, who went in for actions in solidarity with the Ferguson Uprising in 2014, and Jake Conroy, who was convicted for coordinated, successful anti-vivisection divestment campaigns against Huntington Life Sciences as one of the Shack Seven. They're joined by Eric's co-author of Rattling The Cages, Josh Davidson. We hope that you appreciate the wisdom and the passion in the discussion, and you can find Jake's YouTube channel, Cranky Vegan, for a long-running and ongoing commentary on animal liberation topics as well as other things. And you can follow Eric's panels with other former prisoners and supporters on the Instagram for Rattling the Cages, and past media and articles by and about Eric, including past interviews that we've done with or about him at supportericking.org. We'll also link to some past episodes with Eric and Josh in the show notes, and Jake's presentation from the Another Carolina Anarchist Book Fair in 2024 as well.
All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Thank you for coming to this event on a Tuesday evening. The weather is nice outside. You could be out there. But I just want to welcome you all and give my gratitude to our hosts, Eric, Jake, and Josh. I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves first. But we're going to do a little bit of, I think what people in the theater business call house. So first of all, this event is a fundraiser for the July 25th International Day of Solidarity with Anti-Fascist Movements. That Day of Solidarity has been going on for many years now. And while the day's on July 25th, we couldn't get this event to happen on the same day, so we pushed it back a week. No big deal. There's a money jar on the back table. You can put cash donations in, as well as the written down Venmo account that you can send electronic donations for. That Venmo is IADF206. The International Anti-Fascist Defense Fund will receive that money and then dole it out to tens of anti-fascist prisoners internationally that are locked up for various anti-fascist crimes. And so this event is, kind of talk about prisons, prisoners, political prisoners, and use that as also a way to get some financial support going for people who are currently locked up for the struggle. Before we get much further, though, I want to invite somebody from a support campaign for a local anarchist prisoner named Amber Kim come up and give us a little update about what's going on with Amber.
All right.
Hi, my name is Morgan. I'm here to talk about my friend Amber, who is a trans woman in Washington State Prison. About a month ago, Amber was beaten by guards and forcibly transferred from a women's facility where she had been for the last 4 years to a men's facility. The reason that the DOC gave for this was that she was having consensual gay sex with other people in prison. And I think most people are probably familiar that gay sex happens in prison all of the time. And Amber now faces serious risk of harassment and further violence in a men's prison because she is trans. The other person who she was accused of this violation with did not get transferred to a different facility. She's very clearly being discriminated against because she's a trans woman. This is, to our knowledge, the first time that the DOC has transferred a trans woman out of a women's facility as a result of an infraction. So this creates a really dangerous precedent for trans women in Washington State prisons. And I wanted to share a quote from Amber. This is from an article that was written in Truth Out by Vicky Law a couple weeks ago. Amber said, the most important thing to consider is that I'm not an outlier. I've just been able to gain attention for what is normal. The use of state-sanctioned violence to force people into unsafe situations is normal for the DOC. The disregard of a person's understanding of their safety is normal for the DOC. Discrimination against LGBTQ people is normal for the DOC. I'm not special. I just happen to have some luck bringing attention to this issue. So over the past few weeks, Amber has been in solitary confinement in a men's prison. She just concluded a 17-day long hunger strike. And on the outside, a lot of people have been doing weekly calling campaigns to support her, as well as sending letters to her, as well as letters to the DOC. I think we're really trying to organize around this one because like Amber is someone who is really close to a lot of us on the outside. I've been friends with her for 6 years. A lot of other people have been friends with her for many, many years, and she has shown up super hard for other trans women in prison. So that's one reason why we're pushing hard for her, but also because this is really a litmus test for how much violence that they can do against trans women in prison and to see that they can do this to other women in the future. So we're really trying hard for people to show up now to let them know that if they try to do this to other trans women, that people will make a bunch of noise about it. We're asking you today to do 2 things to help us. The first is just that if you have Instagram and you can follow our support page on Instagram, you can take out your phone and it's at support4 Amber Kim. And there's some flyers back there that also have that information on it. The other thing is that there's some postcards in the back and that folks are passing around right now that will go to Cheryl Strange, who is the first openly gay secretary of the DOC. And she, during Pride Week, sent Amber to a men's facility. Obviously, we know that gay people in places of power don't do anything for us. So we are just trying to let Cheryl know that people are paying attention to this situation so that we can hopefully put pressure on them to send her back to the women's facility. You can drop those cards off back at the table back there and we will put a stamp on them and send them out. That's it. Thank you all so much.
Before we get any further, I also wanted to give a quick update on some local prisoner cases here. People who are locked up elsewhere in the country before the uprising that happened in 2020 after the police murder of George Floyd. The first person I want to talk about is Tyree Means. He was arrested and charged and sentenced to several years in prison for helping to burn down a police car during the uprising on the first day of the riots and then stealing a police officer's firearm out the back. I've been a pen pal with Tyree for years since he got locked up, and through our friendships, I've come to find that Tyree's like a really sweet individual who also fully believes in a generalized population or a generalized popular revolt against the violent white supremacist police state. He's a really sweet kid. He's currently locked up in Victorville in California after suffering some pretty intense physical harassment, locked up in Texas at a prison colloquially known as Bloody Beaumont. So I encourage you all to keep Tyree's name in your memories. And I'll give you an idea of how to get access to his address. You can write him later.
Does he have the USP?
He's at USP Victorville, yeah. And then I also want to highlight Marge Shannon, who was locked up after social media photos identified her as being responsible for also setting a cop car on fire in 2020. Marge has been just really steadfast in her time. Has been bounced around a couple of different prisons, but I just want to highlight these 2 folks that were arrested for their activities, over 4 years ago. Those people are still in prison, and many people are still in prison for what they did during the George Floyd uprising in 2020. So I want to encourage you all to keep those names, Tyree Means, Marge Shannon, in your memories, and head to uprisingsupport.org to find their addresses so you can write the mail and the addresses of many, many more individuals who are still locked up. All right. Now that we're done with all the housekeeping,
Let's get this going.
let's welcome our lovely guests. We've got Jake Conroy, who is a contributor to the book Rattling The Cages, and then we've got Josh Davidson and Eric King, both editors for this lovely, massive volume that everybody should read. And then Eric King as well, also contributor. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for coming. Do you guys want to do quick, brief intros? Yeah, let's start with Jake.
All right. How brief? 15 minutes?
I'll yell at you.
What would you like to know?
Name, crime.
Perfect. So my name's Jake Conroy. I live here in the Seattle area. I was sentenced to 48 months. I served 37 months in 2 prisons, one in Victorville, medium security prison there. It's a prison industrial complex, so there's 4 prisons total, 2 mediums, penitentiary and a women's camp. And then I was transferred to Terminal Island, which is a low security prison, which is an island literally in the harbor of San Pedro, Los Angeles. I do an hour-long talk about my case and when I was in prison. I'll try to condense it to about 2 minutes. But basically, myself and some friends ran a pressure campaign against an animal testing laboratory. So on the face, the campaign was very rooted in animal rights, but the core of it was really like a fight against capitalism, because we weren't just protesting against this giant laboratory, we were protesting against anyone and everyone that was associated with it. So we protested against the world's largest banks, the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, the world's largest insurance companies, the auditors, you name it, anyone associated with it, shareholders, stockbrokers. We were protesting against New York Stock Exchange. We were able to essentially get over 100 of the largest corporations in the world to do what we wanted, which was stop funding and supporting this laboratory. We got them kicked off the New York Stock Exchange. We took their $30 share and made it worth about 2 or 3 pennies. And we crippled this corporation. It's very exciting. And by we, I don't necessarily mean me and my friends that did this organization called SHAC, but this global grassroots, non-hierarchical movement that could participate in any way that they wanted. When you have that much of an effect on capitalism, the government takes notice, as do the corporations, of course. We were sued 23 different times. We had federal civil RICO suit brought against us for $12 million apiece. And eventually they arrested 6 of us and charged us with a variety of charges. The main one was called the Animal Enterprise Protection Act, which is now called the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act, which is a law that was specifically written for animal rights activists who were driving around the country and raiding laboratories and fur farms and releasing animals and smashing them up. And the law says if you cross state lines and disrupt a business that uses animals and you do more than $10,000 for the physical damage to the property, they can try you as a domestic terrorist. In our case, they said we crossed state lines using the internet because we were organizing online. And the online organizing space was new. This was 2001 to 2006. But nonetheless, we did more than $10,000 worth of economic sabotage or economic damage to this corporation. And therefore, we were all found guilty under this charge and a variety of others. And so I was sentenced to, as I said, 48 months, basically as a domestic terrorist in federal prison. And that's how I did my time.
My name's Eric. This is my first time speaking outside of Colorado since being released. So I'm very excited. I appreciate all of you coming. I was released 7 months ago after doing about 10 years for firebombing a congressman's office in solidarity with the Ferguson Uprising after the police killed Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. My community was not stepping up to the plate in Kansas City. So after going down to Ferguson for a few days and seeing what those people were suffering through and the risk that they were taking to defend their communities, I felt it was my obligation to join them in that struggle. And so I did what I had to do. I ended up doing 9 years and 6 months or something like that. I was released 7 months ago from the federal supermax ADX, where Chapo's at, where all those motherfuckers are at. I did about 2 years there. I'm one of the only handful of people to ever be at every custody level. I started at low, and then medium, then penitentiary, and then finally supermax for resistance inside prison. I'm just so happy you all are here. Thank you.
And my name is Josh. I've never been to prison, but for the last dozen or so years, I've spent most of my time supporting people who are in prison or have been in prison. I'm a member of the Certain Days Freedom for Political Prisoners Calendar Collective, which has been around for 25 years now, raising money and raising awareness for political prisoners. And I edited this book, Rattling the Cages, along with Eric. It was his idea when he was at the ADX, and we I interviewed about 40 political prisoners with questions that we came up with together. And it was our hope that, the book would not only help raise funds and awareness for political prisoners, but also, help share their stories and help get more people involved in supporting them.
Proudest thing I ever did. Proudest thing I ever did.
Well, thank you for those introductions. Get this started off, I wanted to highlight one of the chapters in Rattling the Cages provided by Bill Dunn, an anarchist political prisoner whose prison sentence actually started here in Seattle, Washington, when he attempted to break out a comrade from jail at the King County Correctional Facility in downtown Seattle in 1979. During the attempted jailbreak, there was a driving shootout between Seattle police and the car carrying Bill and two of his comrades. Bill has attempted to break out of prison at least once since then and had his parole rejected in 2014 due to his political beliefs and his refusal to disavow anarchism. Bill is currently in a medical facility to receive cancer treatment. His chapter in the book stands out to me not only because he wrote it from behind prison walls, but as a long-term prisoner who's carried on the struggle in a principled manner for over 40 years. He almost normalizes the state of conditions in prison while detailing his time there, which I think can be important for reminding readers who've never been in prison that the struggle does not stop when one is put in jail, but rather it continues. For the three of you involved in this book, how did the words of Bill and other elders present in the book sit with you? For the editors, what was the importance to you in including words from Bill Dunn and other elders?
Jump first, all right?
Yeah, go for it.
I'll try to not be long-winded. So I've admired Bill and our elders for a long time before I was locked up. Those are the people that motivated me to push this struggle forward in the way that I felt was most appropriate, the direct action way. And I got to meet some of the elders, and I got to hear their stories inside about their resistance, about their refusal to kowtow to these cops, about how we didn't stop being involved in the struggle. We carried on a different front, and we're often by ourselves in that. More often than not, you do not have other anarchists, other anti-racists, other anti-fascists with you. So it puts your ethics and your commitment to this struggle on the line. It really shows, like, what are you about? And those dudes really dragged me forward. And I use dudes in a non-gender way. If that makes anyone offended, I apologize, and please call me out. But when you see these people that have been down for 20 or 30 years, and they were locked up when these penitentiaries were rocking. They were locked up when it was brutal. Like, it still is, but like, there's levels. And to see them not only not back down, but grow in their ethics, grow in their spirit, grow in their solidarity and commitment to this movement. When you watch that and read about it, like when you pick up someone's book, like, I don't know, Dan Berger's book or something, and you read these stories, like, it fires you up and it shows you that, like, this is worth it. And I can be afraid, but I can still keep going. And it's no different than on the streets, but inside you really have to find it. You really have to want it. And the old cats really helped me with that.
I forgot what the question was. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to say thanks for having me. I just want to give another round of applause to Eric. I think it's remarkable that you're here. It really lifts my spirit. I'm just excited.
He said round of applause.
I'm excited to see you here. It's a hard thing to do. I think, we all have different experiences and different experiences, right? And when we're in prison, everyone's got their own story. And none of them are easy. Some may be harder than others. But at the end of the day, no one really knows what it means for that individual and what they went through behind bars or incarcerated. I don't know all of your stories. I don't know all of your experiences. I can only imagine and probably not even come close to what they were. So just the fact that you're here and you're speaking up for the things that you care about and feel passionate about really warms the heart, and I appreciate you. So thank you. I first got started I started doing activism in the mid-90s here in Seattle. And, one of the things that I did as a young activist was I just devoured as much information as I possibly could about a wide range of different movements. I did a lot of my activism focused on animal issues, but that's not entirely where my focus was. I really tried to spread it out as much as I could, but it was the stories from elders or people that had come before me or were still around but had done the work before that were really where I found my biggest inspirations, right? People that recognized the need for struggle, the need for resistance, and the need to take risks. And they did that, and they did it in really big ways. And I looked towards things like the Panthers and American Indian movement and the Young Lords, anyone and everyone I could get my hands on books and just read and devoured. And those groups weren't perfect, right? They all had problems, they all had issues, they had big red flags, but there were people in them that did some really amazing and important work. And some of them are still paying the price for it now, right? They're still incarcerated. And I know this kind of goes back to the whole point of this conversation is the desire and the need to support people that are incarcerated. But the thing that I really took away from all these stories and things that I read and speeches that I heard and the more I learned about elders and people in the movement that have been around for a long time is the issue around solidarity. And of course that looks different to everyone and feels different to everyone. But the thing that really that always sticks out to me is, are people familiar with Marilyn Buck?
If you're not, you should be.
There you go. She was one that helped Assata Shakur be liberated from prison. And she passed away. And I went to her memorial in Oakland. And we were in this church, if I remember correctly. And I was in the last row of the top tier. And just in front of me was a sea of people that were just incredible people that I read about and learned about and met over the decades. And was just so impressed and by it. And the last person to come up and speak had a tape recorder, and they had a tape recorded message, and they said this tape recording message flew from Cuba to Oakland, and it still makes me want to like tear up, but it was a recorded message from Assata Shakur from Cuba, basically thanking Marilyn Buck for essentially trading places with her, right? And that level of solidarity and respect for a movement, for a cause, for a belief, so much so that it might not have affected Marilyn personally as a white person, but they were willing to swap places essentially so that Assata Shakur could be free. And that level of solidarity was something that I really took inspiration from people that were back then, and even decades later, sitting in that memorial for Marilyn Buck was such a stark reminder of how much we need to support one another. We need to show up for one another. We need to take big risks and take action for one another, even if we're not necessarily in immediate, community together. We're all fighting for liberation, and we all need to help each other out in those fights for liberation. And that's something that I really took away from not just that experience, but from all the people that inspired me as an activist and continue to inspire me.
No, I don't have anything to add.
And you pissed me off so much. God damn it.
Thanks, Guy. So this is a little bit of a generic question, but the three of you all have different roles in this book. So you're gonna hopefully have different answers. What did y'all learn from this book? Like Josh, you were the editor on the outside. You got to really read and parse through every chapter before it made it to published form. Eric, this was kind of like your brain baby. Something, in the ADX, you're not able to create very much at this time. And so, you've got the seed of an idea behind Many Prison Doors becomes this massive 400-page book by AK Press that Left Bank Books can't keep on the shelf. Jake, you get to contribute a chapter to it, and I think get to, tell some very good stories and necessary stories for people engaging in prisoner solidarity. What did you all learn from the process of this book, either in creating it, reading other people's contributions? What was that like for each of you?
I can go first. So I interviewed 40 people for this book, 40 former political prisoners or current political prisoners. And they all have different stories. They all come from different parts of the movement, from different generations. But they all had love and solidarity as the cornerstone of their lives, of their part in the struggle and how they survived prison. And I think that came through really clearly in every single conversation. Not only their commitment to the struggle, but also the importance of outside support and how much support means to people inside, how much of a lifeline it is to people inside. But I think really for me, it was just building these relationships. I knew maybe a third of the people already that are in the book, but now that I know these other 2/3 and even other people that aren't included in the book, it really just feels like a whole world has opened up of radical and amazing people. And it's just really great to not only be allowed to, or to be a part of sharing their stories, but to get to know these people.
The two immediate things I learned from the book is one, that I'm lazy, and two, that I ramble. Because I ended up not writing it. Poor Josh had to like Zoom call me and interview me because I just could not get it together. And then secondly, poor Josh had to edit my ramblings into a cohesive narrative. So I appreciate it. But thank you. Yeah, I think a couple of the takeaways for me was what I said earlier is like everyone has their own experience, right? We all have different experiences, different stories, and that we all do different time. We all did different time in prison, right? Meaning like some people went about their time, and did, maybe they studied, maybe they became more politically active, maybe others were just trying to survive. Maybe, everyone had a different strategy and experience within prison. And that was interesting to me. But at the same time, we all fell underneath this big umbrella of being incarcerated and experiencing prison industrial complex very up close and personally, something that perhaps a lot of us have fought previously, or maybe we all did a lot of prisoner support. That's something I did a lot, was I pushed a lot for political prisoner support, but I'd never been on the receiving end of that. So like being on the receiving end of that was very eye-opening to me about what that means, and I'm sure we'll get into that later. But just knowing that I was kind of under this umbrella in a way was kind of, I guess it was a bit comforting, knowing not that other people were also having horrible experiences in prison, but like we kind of were all going through it together, even if it was generationally. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to run with it. Generationally, because we did a talk at the Howard Zinn Book Fair, and there was people from multiple generations, all that were in the book, and sharing experiences, and just knowing that like I could turn to someone that was 30 or 40 years older than me and be like, hey, like, this is what happened to me. Did this happen to you? How did you get through it? What helped you? What hurt you? And they could talk back, they could answer those questions, and we could share stories and ideas, and we would understand each other. It was, it's knowing that there are people spread out around the United States and around the world that I can be in community with in a very special way, I think was kind of like a nice takeaway from the book.
So Jake touched on a lot of stuff, so I'll go a different direction. I got really inspired to write this book after Tom Manning died. Not write the book, but like get it out. I don't know if any of you know Tom Manning, but he's one of our elders. He was one of my heroes. Just a dedicated anti-racist, just fighter, warrior. And he did brutal time. He was also at the ADX. He did 5 years there. And he was someone I looked up to. And when he passed away, I thought, like, I wonder what his life was like. Like, I wonder not what his ethics are. Like, what's your day-to-day like? Did you have friends? Like, did you ever cry? Did you ever miss your son? And I was just desperate to know this, because between me and you, I'm very soft. I am a very emotional person. And this stuff that was happening in prison to me at these times was crushing me. It was crushing. It was hurting me, like, physically, like I got the scars, but it was also like just destroying me emotionally. And I felt really alone, because when you read about our elders, what you hear is this bombastic, like, we're fighters, we never back down, we do this, we do this. But you never get to hear like the vulnerability of like, I cried because I missed my son's birthday. Like my little girl turned 10 and I didn't get to hug her. So I wanted to know, like, am I alone? Like, am I in this because I'm crying all the time? I'm sorry if there's any word, I'm sorry. But like, that was really, really important to me to know that like, I wasn't the only one feeling it. And when Josh and I formulated the questions, Josh made them a lot smarter than I could have. And when I read other people's answers, I saw like other people had a bad time. Like, other people felt things. Other people were sad sometimes. And other people like made friends. Like, it's okay to make friends and like find happiness, because finding happiness is resistance inside. If you can find joy Yeah, hell yeah. If you can find joy inside, like you're beating these motherfuckers. And so when I got to read about different people's experiences of like, not only like, yes, I'm sad all the time, but also, yes, I'm happy all the time. And I do it despite these punks trying to bury us. That made me feel, what's the opposite of alone? It made me feel encompassed. Like what you said, like we're in this together. We're a unified front of resistance inside prison. It's both our joy and our vulnerability that binds us together. And it just made me feel so happy. Like it made me just feel happy. Thank you for doing the job.
If you want to support The Final Straw Radio, you can subscribe to our podcast via various platforms, follow, rate, and share our materials online, and learn more at tfsr.wtf. And if you'd like to fund our transcription work that allows for easier translation, more accessibility of content, and the zines that we produce from each interview, consider picking up some merch from us or making a one-time or recurring donation via PayPal, Venmo, Stripe, or LibrePay, or joining our Patreon to access early release content and other goodies via the links that you can find at tfsr.wtf/support. The Final Straw Radio is a proud member of the Channel Zero network of anarchist podcasts, and here's a jingle from another member of CZN.
KiteLine is a weekly 30-minute radio program focusing on issues in the prison system. You'll hear news along with stories from prisoners and former prisoners as well as their loved ones. You'll learn what prison is, how it functions, and how it impacts all of us.
Behind the prison walls, a message is called a kite. Whispered words, a note passed hand to hand, a request submitted to the guards for medical care. Illicit or not, sending a kite means trusting that other people will bear it farther along until it reaches its destination. Here on KiteLine, we hope to share these words across the prison walls.
You can hear us on the Channel Zero network and find out more at kitelineradio.noblogs.org.
This kind of taps right into that. Prisons operate on their ability to isolate prisoners from the outside world. These levels of isolation vary from holding people in general population to long-term solitary confinement. In many ways, prisoner solidarity organizing aims to lessen this isolation, if not overcome it through actions like letter writing programs, noise demonstrations, and general publicity and awareness raising. Sometimes through this organizing could lead to overrunning the prison walls, not just metaphorically, but sometimes we do succeed in transcending the borders of prison through struggle. Was this something either of you, Jake or Eric, have experienced either in your personal time served in prison or through supporting someone in prison, Josh as well? Like, have you got like, when our struggles bring us together through the walls, like, was that something you guys have experienced when you were locked up?
Can we go on? Sure. So just so you know, like I did 9.5 years or whatever. 7.5 of those was in 24-hour lockdown, was in shoe. That included like a 5.5 years straight bid. 4 of those years I wasn't allowed phone calls, mail, visits. I was completely cut off. The reason I was completely cut off is because people did a noise demo for me outside of a federal prison. I was facing new charges for assaulting a lieutenant, and these people did a noise demo for me. And it was beautiful. Like, it made me feel so proud. But in the process, they videotaped, they live streamed it, and they busted up a cop's car. So, and this is when Trump's doing like his big, like, Antifa, Antifa, Antifa. I'm the only anti-fascist in the federal prison system at that time. I openly like repping that. And so because of that, they took away everything. They said I was the leader of Antifa. And yeah, these clowns. True. But so they took away everything because of an act of solidarity. Those people never asked me if I wanted that demo because they couldn't. I wasn't able to talk. I was in the shoe. And I would have said yes. I would have said absolutely yes. But that reached inside the walls. Like, that got me put in a cell with literally just a mattress for 3 weeks. No sheets, no blankets, no pillows, no food. I got 2 meals a day, and it was a log. That was reaching inside in a bad way. Reaching outside in a good way is Josh. He wrote me when I was in the shoe at Leavenworth. And friendship from actual like writing in a way that's not just pandering to me as a political prisoner, but as a human being. Like addressing me as a real person, where it develops into a friendship, and then it can develop into a beautiful project that supports other prisoners. My wife wrote me. That's how I met my wife. That's how I became a dad. That's how I met these two. Like the people in my life right now are all people that wrote me. I don't have a single friend from my free world. So those cowards are like, we're busy. But the people that wrote was a friend that wrote me. Like these letters and this support, it's not a game. Like this isn't just like, I saw a flower today, hope you're having a good day, bye. You can change someone's life. You can take a situation where someone's having the worst day of their life every single day, 5 years, 6 years, and give them a good day. You can give them the most joy in their life when this cop shows up and says mail day and it has their name on it. And they know that someone cares, someone put effort into showing them love. Someone tangibly wrote a letter, annoyingly put it in a little envelope, put a stamp on that bitch, and ship that out. Like that takes work. And that shows that you really care. And when I was able to get mail, which wasn't all the time, it made me feel so whole and so complete and brought the most beautiful people into my life. And that's the connection that it had for me.
Yeah.
We don't have to clap after every. Like, we're gonna spend 30 minutes clapping. Just give me a snap. Just give us a snap or something.
I want a full standing ovation.
He's not joking.
Gosh, when I think of like resistance in prison, I would see some like very specific and small pockets of resistance that were really exciting to me, with like lay-ins, like basically like strikes. You know, in prison, you are required to work a 40-hour work week. And a lot of those folks are working in, at least where I was, in Unicor, which is essentially like factories. At Victorville, they were refurbishing 5-ton trucks for the military, sending trucks from the Middle East, where you'd be refurbishing them and then sending them back to the Middle East. Even more fucked up was that in the penitentiary, they were taking pickup trucks and refurbishing them for Border Patrol. And they would have undocumented people that were incarcerated there, forcing them to do that labor. And you would, you know, they're making, those are the high paying jobs. You're making $1 an hour. Pretty nice. So the prison industrial complex runs on manual labor, slave labor. You know, we can look at the 13th Amendment and realize that is what still continues today inside prisons. And so, you know, it's beyond just like working in Unicor, all the food is cooked, prepared, and served by inmates. All the clothing we wear is manufactured by inmates. All the desks and furniture that people use, particularly the cops, are all manufactured in Unicor by prison labor. So people look at that and think, oh, I can make a little bit of money, then I can buy some stuff at commissary. But on rare occasions, at least at Victorville, maybe more so in other places, people realize the power that they had as workers, right? And essentially doing sit-ins or lay-ins where we're just not going to get out of bed today. 6 o'clock in the morning, they come and unlock your cell, and you had to get up and you had to go to chow hall, and you had a breakfast, and then you had to go to work. And if 1,300 people at Victorville decided they weren't going to refurbish 5-ton trucks for the military anymore, not only was that just like a resistance as inmates, but it suddenly was interrupting not just the prison industrial complex, but you're interrupting the military, right? And I don't think a lot of people fully recognize the power that had, but some people did. And on occasion, there were lay-ins, strikes. You know, people were not getting out of bed. Well, you know, in our unit, we had 120 something people, 120 inmates, and 1 cop. Okay, so you do the math. Like 1 cop is not going to be able to get 120 people out of their bunks. So there was this real power when people realized it, that if we just didn't go to work, they're eventually going to have to do what we want them to do, or they're going to have to do, they're going to have to do what we say. And on occasion, I saw that in there. That was uplifting. There were times when there was inmates being taken advantage of and being treated really poorly in the visiting room by certain COs, correctional officers, cops. And it took the strength of a lot of inmates coming together from all different backgrounds and races and gangs. So in prison, a lot of times, at least the one I was in, I'm sure you have a similar experience. Everything's segregated by race, by gang, by where you're from, so forth and so on. Everything's segregated. And so by design, right? And so when those groups and communities start coming together, that doesn't just show power. It also shows a very clear message to the administration and to the Bureau of Prisons that like, oh, like this is something serious. Like they are recognizing, these inmates are recognizing their power. And I saw that a couple of times where a bunch of different people from a bunch of different groups and backgrounds and gangs, communities all came together to approach the warden and the assistant warden and be like, hey, you got a real problem here. And if something doesn't get resolved, like it's going to hit the fan. And they took care of it, not to their credit, of course, but that was because we all showed up and resisted. And so on the outside, that might not seem like a big deal, but on the inside, that's a really big deal, at least in the prison that I was in. So seeing things like that was really inspiring. Being a part of those things were really inspiring. And as an activist, I'm like, let's go, let's just take this and roll with it into the next fight. And then, the next day everyone's, rioting and stabbing each other, and it didn't quite work out that way, but it could have. So it was kind of heartening to be like, oh, I just hope that, little pieces of that stick with the people involved as a reminder, like we do have power. On a personal level, the case I was telling you about that I was involved in, it was the largest FBI investigation of its time. We had an enormous amount of resources that the FBI and private industries used to target us outside. We had our phones tapped, 555 90-minute cassette tapes worth of our phone calls. We had infiltrators. We were the first group of people in the United States that the government tried to hack into their computers using malware to try to get into our encryption software. I could go on at length about what they did. And I think naively, when I left the activist world and went to prison, I thought I would be done as Jake Conroy and I would start this new life as like 935011011. But what I found out very quickly is that like the government was there to continue to kind of harass and try to intimidate me into not being able to maintain that sense of self that, very little is, the ability to do so is very limited. Letter writing, visitation, and phone calls, which aren't considered rights, they're considered privileges. They made sure that like I couldn't get any visits, and I figured out a way to navigate around that and kind of hoodwink the system, which I did. And a friend of mine came and visited, and the FBI showed up her door a week later. How did you get in to visit Jake? What did you guys talk about? What were you doing? I was put in solitary because they said I was trying to. There's a threat of me organizing people outside of prison. There was a threat of me organizing people inside of prison. I'm very lucky in that my solitary time was nothing in comparison to Eric's. No, you're much tougher than me. Everyone, as I said, has different experiences. But solitary, I was on a high visibility inmates program where they thought I was one of the biggest threats to the prison. A wide range of things that the government did to try to shut me down. But if I can just echo what Eric said, those little bits of support that might not feel like a little bit, or might feel like a little bit from someone on the outside, is a huge, huge boost to people on the inside. I always call letters a jailbreak. Every letter was a jailbreak. You get that letter. And I was very lucky. The first, I got a letter literally every single day that the prison would give me my mail, which wasn't all the time. But the days that I got letter, they gave me my mail. I got a letter. Sometimes I got 5, sometimes I got 20, sometimes I was getting 50 letters a day, which was incredible, which speaks to the level of support that we all on the outside understand those on the inside need. But every one of those letters, I would take up to my cell and I'd set them out and I would open that one and I'd read the front and I'd read the back. And that was a jailbreak. It was a prison escape, right? I'd look at the picture of the cat. Someone sent me, oh, that's cute. I got so many pictures of cats, which I appreciate, of course. And then I put that letter away, open the next one. That was my next jailbreak. If I was lucky, I get 5 or 10 jailbreaks a day, right? And every letter, 5-10 minutes, I get to read it. And I would just read it so slow and savor them. I'd hear about your vacations, the food you're eating, the television show you're watching, the camping trip you went on, stuff you might have been thinking, man, this was so boring. No one's going to want to read this letter. That was me escaping from prison. And then I would get to, as much as I could, write everyone back. And that was a prison escape, right? And the relationships I formed with people similar to Eric were so special to me, People, I got out in 2010. I'm still friends with people that I wrote in prison. I still have very special relationships with, and I still go and visit, and they visit me. And those things wouldn't have happened without prisoner support. And so I don't say it lightly when I say that, like those letters and the support that I received, and I'm sure Eric received, like saved my life. And I don't mean that like metaphorically and figuratively. It literally saved my life. And since we're on the subject, I'll just say one more thing about prisoner support. Let's get this thing rolling, blabbermouth. Is that prisoner support doesn't end at the gate, right? When you get out of prison, it's not over. Some of the most important support I got as a prisoner came after I got out of prison, when I was in the halfway house. Even when I got out of the halfway house and was on probation, some of the support I got from people, again, were lifesavers. Someone found me employment. I hadn't had a job since 1995 or something like that, 1996, and it was 2010. I didn't know how to interact in the world. I had, for the very short amount of time I was in prison, just a few years, it felt very much like I was institutionalized. When I got out, I was angry. I was raged. Someone cut me in line at the bus. I needed to fight that motherfucker. You know what I mean? Someone cut me in line at the bank or anything. That person needs to get up. Like, that's how it is in prison, right? If you're disrespected, you need to fight. And you're walking around in society and you're like, you're getting disrespected everywhere. And that takes a big toll on you emotionally, right? And so having people that understood that and support you and helped you and made dinner for me or drove me to my therapy session or helped pay for my therapy session or gave me a couple bucks on the side so I could go to the store and get something that wasn't some food that I'd been eating for 3 or 4 years, right? Was like a piece of heaven. So support people when they get out of prison, because that's really when the prisoner support kind of starts to drag. But that is also when a little bit can go a really long way. You can really help. And just because I'm rambling, I'll go one more. That your immediate support people, your family, your parents, your kids, your partners, they also need support, right? They are going through a traumatic situation. It might not be the same traumatic experience that we're going through on the inside, but they have had their family member, their loved one stripped away from them for years, for decades. And a lot of times they can't even visit them or talk to them on the phone or write them a letter for years. And that's scary as someone on the inside, but it's also scary to the people on the outside that they've lost their loved ones. So show up for those people, as well, and support them in any way that they may need or ask for. So I like to snap.
Impactful things from support.
Yeah, they both have talked about how your letters can change their lives and offer them, a life-saving, something life-saving in this horrible place, but it can also change your life. Like, had I not bumped into David Gilbert's book and knocked it over in a little bookstore and sat there and read it all day and decided to write to him, I wouldn't be here today. Had I not written to him, I wouldn't be part of the Certainty Is calendar. Every time I visited David, I would ask him what he needed for support, what he could use, and he would just tell me to write to other people. That other people needed that support, that love, and that solidarity. And I think that that's what it's all about. You can build these relationships, not just through prison bars, but in spite of them. Mm-hmm. And you can make something really beautiful grow. You can make, if you're lucky, you'll get them out of prison and you'll be able to support them on the outside. But if not, you can still make something beautiful, in spite of those prison walls.
Well, both of y'all, all of your guys' answers kind of touched on the 2 other things I wanted to talk about: transitioning out to the outside.
Let me talk about that shit.
Do you want to go?
Well, I mean, if that's a question.
Okay.
I'll ask the question first.
All right, Eric. What would you like to say about transitioning to the outside?
Thank you.
I'd like to talk more, actually.
So, as I said, I got out 7 months ago. Like, I just got out. And it was 5.5 years of no contact to now I'm in a halfway house. And that shell shock was terrifying. Every day it was terrifying. And I was able to survive that because I had support on a level that I'd say, who knows, most prisoners don't. I saw people there where I had to call my friends to get them socks because the halfway house wasn't giving them socks or shoes. You could have the bus shoes you came in on and that's it. Like, we were having to get sleeping bags for people because they were kicking them out of the halfway house homeless. They didn't have anywhere to go. Because I had built these relationships and people were kind enough to me, I had things like towels, toothbrush, toothpaste, good socks, enough socks, a hat, things that make you feel human. I had a partner that taught me how to use a smartphone. I never used a smartphone. I never used an app. I still f- with it sometimes. I still get confused. But I have these things that I know that if every single prisoner had, we could snatch people away from those gates. Because the prison system's set up to where you are hopeless. You have to commit crimes against capitalism to survive. Every single infraction can get you put back inside. My case manager in the halfway house tried to get me fired. I got a career when I got out. People that wrote me, we became close with, they became my lawyers and then hired me at their law firm. So I got out of prison and immediately had a job as a paralegal. Blessed. Huge. I've never been close to making that, having that sort of life or that sort of purpose. And this motherfucker is trying to get me fired every day. Because if your boss doesn't answer when they call, after 2 no answers, you're kicked out of that job. So your boss has to, and he's calling her or calling them 8 a.m., 8:50 p.m., random times, trying to slip them up so I could get fired. Because he hates seeing people succeed. You might have experienced this as well. The people at the halfway house are not our friends. They're not there to lift us up. They're there to hold us until we go back into the system. That's all it is. It's a very, very low security prison. And if you don't have support, if you don't have emotional support, like bro mentioned therapy, like I have EMDR therapy and it's volunteered to me. Who has that? Like who can afford that? I couldn't afford it without it. And so like these things that help us mentally, emotionally, and then tangibly to survive, that's the difference between going back inside. Like I'm still on probation right now. I had to get permission from my probation officer, from a judge, saying I'm going to be at this place at this time around these people. Jake was going to be here. I had to get permission for that by name. They had to look them up and say, like, what are you guys going to talk about? Are there any rabbits involved? Like, what's going on?
Yes. Labs here.
What?
Yeah, they got primate labs, rabbit labs. This is rat labs. Yeah, they got a
Serious?
primate lab here. Like 1,000 monkeys. We put in cages away from their mothers.
I'm trying to be silly.
It's a federal lab. Yeah. It's not even maybe that good science.
What? That up. As I was saying, support people when they're out of prison. Like, just be there for people. Like when you see someone's getting out, like trust me, they need something. It might be shoelaces, it might be an old pair of shoes, it might be glasses. They need something. It might be someone to talk to. Might just be someone listening to them cry. But they need help, and it doesn't take much. So on the back of what Jake said, and thanks for your wonderful question, like that's what I would really recommend is like understand that we need help, just like we need help on the streets.
Thank you, Eric.
Oh, you're welcome.
I don't know what the question was. Or if I participated.
You already answered.
Okay, I want to shift gears to a topic that's maybe somehow a little bit more brutal. There's a narrative around race, whiteness, white supremacy specifically in gang culture in prisons. Oftentimes the narrative is that white folks, especially white men, have to assimilate and join some kind of white power, Aryan Brotherhood, white supremacist prison gang if they're going to be able to survive their prison sentence. There's a short history of, maybe one or a couple of people have gone into prison, not member of a white supremacist organization, and come out a member of a white supremacist organization. People from our radical circles, people not. I'm curious as to white ex-prisoners, what is y'all's answers when you are confronted with this narrative that as a white guy in prison you have to join the Aryan Brotherhood to make it through? You can go first, want me to? You can go.
Okay. So just so everyone knows, like the Aryan Brotherhood and the Feds is like a very exclusive club. You are not joining it. It's called the Brand. There's only like 30 of them, like 18 of them are in ADX, like old motherfuckers with big white mustaches. You're not joining that gang. But in my experiences, I was in a little later than Jake, so things might have been different. But when you enter prison, you are entering as your race. You cannot separate from it. And if you try to separate from it, you will leave prison missing parts of yourself. If you're a white, you will join a car. You will not have a choice about this. In my case, it was Missouri car, Kansas City. That's what it's broken up into.
What a car is.
Oh, I'm sorry. A car is an organized group that you sit with, work out with, eat with. You can still be friends with everyone else and kick it with them. But like when I ate breakfast, lunch, dinner, I am sitting at the Missouri table exclusively on the right side with the Kansas City bros. And it's the white table. And then over there's the natives, over there's the blacks, over here's the Southern Californians, over here's the Paisas. You're not gonna get away from that. I had to live with white guys, I had to eat with white guys, I had to work out with white guys. If I shared a cup of coffee with a black guy, I was gonna get stabbed. That's how it is. But so those are things you cannot help. And if you try to push that line, it's gonna push back, and it's gonna push back with steel. Like you're gonna get chopped up. So there were lots of times where I would try to navigate it in very peculiar ways. Like at least at Florence and at the Pins, you could teach classes and have other races in your classes. So I would teach a yoga class. Let the gay bro in. Let the black bro in. Like welcome these people that I wasn't traditionally allowed to be with. And then I'd go back to my cell and I'd get jumped by the ACs. ACs are Aryan Circle. It's a Texas white power gang. And that was just how it goes. Like once or twice a week, like I'd have to fight these motherfuckers. And it just became very normal. Like, are you going to let these N-words stay in your class? And yes, I am, motherfucker. And then it goes. And that's how I did my time. And it sucked, but you can navigate it. Like another thing we did, you could gamble with other races. You couldn't hang out with them at their table or watch their TV, but you could gamble with them. So we would have Scrabble tournaments. Me and my black friends or me and my Paisa friends. And we'd say it's for money. And their people don't care. The Paisas don't care if they hang out with white guys. They don't give a shit. But the white guys care. So the Paisas would back me like, yeah, we're betting $10. And then we'd say it was $10 on the line, and the white dudes would back the up. They give me space to breathe because I got to get the white money. It's gross. It's gross. But if you're clever and you stay under the radar, you can navigate that shit. And you don't have to join a gang. Like you have to go out of your way to join a gang. It is a long process. It involves lots of fighting, lots of stabbing. There's an initiation period, a novice period. You have to make a conscious decision. You are never just going to be walking around prison one day and this dude comes up to you. You're a member of the brand now. The people that have that happen to them are people that most likely weren't feeling validated by the outside world. They felt abandoned. And the people that were making them not feel abandoned were these shitheads. It was these shitheads saying like, you're strong, you're brave, you're cool. I don't know why people don't support you. You're a badass. We got you though. We're your family. And they prey on weak and insecure people that are also strong and violent people. And so when these dudes become gang members, they are making a conscious decision every day of their life to become a gang member. And when I fought those fucking Nazis, I was making a conscious decision every day of my life to fight these Nazis. And it's just how it goes. And you have to decide what's important to you. And those dudes chose to feel validated more than they chose to feel their ethics. And that's how my experience was. You were in a very nasty prison. You can talk about that also.
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, I think everyone has different experiences, and that wasn't quite mine, but it was somewhat similar in that, like in Victorville, everything was segregated. Everyone was segregated. It was self-segregated. People were segregated by race. They were segregated by gang, neighborhood, into cars. You had shot callers, you had unit reps who were like the people that were involved, that were like the head of the white rep and the black rep and the Paisa rep. And then they all answered to the shot caller, and each unit had a different, every unit had a different rep. And it's a bunch of bullshit, right? It's exhausting. But there is an understanding that if you don't follow the rules to a certain extent, then you will be reprimanded or punished. And it depends on what you did wrong or what your infraction was or whether or not they just didn't like you. For me, obviously I wasn't interested in any of that bullshit, but I also knew that if you step too far out of line, like that resulted in like you getting thrown to the ground and your face kicked in by five guys in steel toe boots, which is what happened quite regularly at Victorville. So it was trying to figure out a way to navigate that. I know I thought we were going to 7:30, so I've been rambling, so I'm going to try to condense. But, for me, when you come into prison, if you look different, if you don't fit the mold, then you are a target for extortion, at least in the prison that I was in. So as a guy that not covered in tattoos, I'm not exactly the most muscular guy. I was like the scrawny vegan kid, and they're all like, who the is this guy? Yeah. Like, what's up, new fish? And they're all like as I came in, I'm swimming in my orange jumpsuit. I'm immediately a target, right, for extortion. And you get asked some very pointed questions when you come in. Essentially, where did you come from? Where did you transfer from? Because you don't start in a prison like Victorville, but I did. So that made me unusual as well. I didn't come from anywhere. I started. What do you mean you started here? What are you in for? Here's a question that's very loaded. They want to make sure you're not a child molester. They want to make sure you're not a snitch. If you're one of those two things, you're going to get stabbed or worse. But you can't just say, well, I'm not these things, and then, come up with something. They want proof. And so you have to have your legal documents, which the Bureau of Prisons has now made illegal or not appropriate for you to have, right? Because too many people were getting stabbed at places like Victorville and places that you were at. So, you had to prove that you weren't these things. And you basically had to show that you knew what you were doing. And you also had to show that you were down for your car. And that meant you were going to follow the rules. You were going to ride with your car.
Did you guys have to put in work?
Yeah. And so that meant if there was going to be someone needed to be disciplined, you got to go do it. If there's going to be a riot, we all got to go out to the yard and you got to be a part of it. These are things I try to avoid. Might become a bit of a shock, but these are the things I was not interested in. I got out of it, interestingly, because I would be like, dude, they'd be like, all right, you got to go beat this guy up. And be like, dude, I'm like the vegan. I'm not very strong. I'm not going to be able to hurt this guy. And they're like, oh, yeah, right on, brother. You watch the door while we take care of this cholo. And I'm like, I know. Like stand outside the door. I'll watch for the cops, sir. But you did have to have a bit of creativity in order to get around it. And for me, the things that helped me was, one, I took my case to trial. The feds win 95% of their cases. So most people take a deal. Doesn't mean they're cooperating deals, but most people take deals. So the fact that I took it to trial made me different than most people, but in a good way. The fact that I didn't snitch on anyone after that, I could prove it with my paperwork, was a big deal that I went to trial and didn't snitch on anyone. And there was ways you could answer those questions, like, how much time did you get? Well, I only got 4 years in a place where people are doing life sentences or 20, 30 years. I'm short to the door, which is kind of disrespectful. So I'd be like, well, I was supposed to get, my federal sentencing guidelines had me at 11 to 13 years. And they wanted me to snitch and they offered me 5, but I didn't. And then that's kind of a way you could let people know, I went to trial and I didn't snitch. And that built respect around who you were. It was very hairy for me in the first several months. A lot of white power and skinheads, Warhammer skins, and they called themselves AB, were there, dirty white boys. I don't know if you had dirty white boys. All these kind of white power gangs were all jockeying for, oh, here's the new guy. We either can exploit him or we can turn him into one of us. And obviously I wasn't interested in either. So I'd kind of just keep my distance, and they would throw insults and keep my distance. And just, these were big dudes with swastika tattoos. It's I wasn't a threat to them, but they wanted something from me. And I was able to push it off long enough where I could get enough respect from the people, not just in my car, but the people in my unit. And that meant I was able to do things that most people weren't. I was able to share food with Black people. I was able to have people from different races and different cars into my cell and shut the door, which is something you're not really supposed to be allowed to do by inmate culture, at least in the place I was at. Have conversations. I had all sorts of interesting conversations because I was able to get enough respect to be able to do those things. And that's how I survived, by building those levels. And becoming friends, genuine friends. I think I met all sorts of people. People I probably wouldn't be friends with on the outside, But a lot of these folks just wanted someone to listen to them, right? They just wanted someone to understand and to have an ear to talk to. And so when they closed the door and we talk about gang politics, oh, your buddy down there? Oh yeah, he's 12th Street. If I saw him on the street, I would shoot on sight. I'm like, yeah, but you guys work out and hang out all the time. Oh, I'd shoot him on the outside. Inside, we're friends. We're on the same team. We're Serenos. We're the foot soldiers of the Mexican mafia. On the street, he's my enemy and I'd kill him. And be like, well, what about all the money, all the money you make on the streets? You've thought about using those to buy bikes for the kids in your community that you care about? Oh, I never really thought about that. Or, having gang members come to me and be like, I don't know how to read. Do you mind if I just practice reading? They felt safe. They felt like they had someone to listen that would listen to them. And that got me a lot of respect with everyone, and make genuine friendships with people that, according to prison politics, should be my enemy. And that felt really important to me. That was the way I wanted to do my time, and I fought really hard for that. And it worked in my favor. When I got transferred to the lower security prison, there was that level of institutionalization where I didn't want to hang. I wanted that. I kind of embraced that feeling, right? I wanted that as part of my experience for some reason. And I don't know, stop there. I get the message. You're asking. But there is a level of institutionalization that comes from being in those environments, and it takes hold of you really quick. And it goes back to that prisoner support. It takes a lot of support from people on the outside that care about you to break you of that. And that is another reason that I value prisoner support so much. I'll end there.
Sure. Thanks. That was really good one from both of you. Thank you guys. I was so
This is The Final Straw Radio. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions and suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net or thefinalstrawradio@protonmail.com. If you'd like to use any episode for your project or radio show, feel free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. If you care to, you can send us letters at TFSR, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. Programming support is brought to you by Firestorm Books. Located at 1022 Haywood Road in West Asheville, Firestorm is a bookstore and social movement space owned by its workers, in operation since 2008. Their event calendar and complete catalog of books can be found online at firestorm.coop.